I'm Jessica Ann Pressler, and you've tuned into Your Traitor Within, a podcast that exposes the brutal truths of healing, self discovery, and breaking free from relentless patterns of self sabotage. Arci Grey is a living example of the powerful shift that happens when we reclaim our power from our traitor within. Her life was shaped by a long history of trauma, including childhood sexual abuse that shaped her adult relationships and ultimately surviving kidnapping, rape, and attempted murder. Arci is the founder of Survivor School and creator of Break Free from CPTSD, a program that helps others uncover the hidden roots of self-sabotage and break free from the subconscious trauma responses keeping them stuck. Using applied neuroscience and neurohypnosis, she guides people through the process of regulating their nervous systems, rewiring survival responses, and reclaiming control of their lives. I am so honored to have you here on your Traitor Within podcast to tell your story of how your Traitor Within was created and how it affected your life. Thank you ahead of time of your vulnerability and telling your story. I know this episode will help many. Welcome, Arci.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am beyond happy to have you here. We have spoken earlier, and before here, and I've heard some of your story as well on other podcasts. And my God, my heart, I just want to hug you. I want to hug you for all that you've been through your whole life and how you have turned your pain and your trauma into helping other people. So thank you. And you're going to be a wonderful inspiration for so many people out there. And I know that you absolutely truly understand the traitor within because we've talked about it. And and you telling your story of your traitor will help so many people understand their own and see themselves through your story. So again, thank you again for being here. So if it's okay with you, can we talk a little bit about your childhood trauma? Because I do believe
Yeah,
that the traitor starts to be formed in childhood.
absolutely. And before we do, I also want to say thank you to you for creating this platform. I think that there are so oftentimes, people talk about their trauma and they talk about the symptoms or the effects of their trauma. But I love that this podcast focuses on the cause of our life experiences, right? Looking at and where we have responsibility in doing this. So yes, I would absolutely be happy to talk about where this all began.
Because
Um,
the traitor empowers you to change, to make change.
exactly. That's exactly it. I think people really need to understand the importance of this. This is like the secret. This is the key to having a different life is really going back into the root of what we do have control over, and we regain that control when we find the source. So this is amazing. I love this. So yes, my childhood trauma. So essentially, I grew up in a lower middle class family. We didn't have a lot of resources. We were, by some standards, poor, and a lot of that came from the mentality of my parents, and probably I know my grandmother lived through quite a bit of trauma. My mom definitely experienced trauma, although she refuses to talk about it. And I picked up that generational trauma, that the sort of tragedy that just continued to strike the family. And the and it's not my place to talk about my mother's trauma or my grandmother's trauma other than to know that I absorbed a lot of the effects of their trauma. And so the earliest memory I have of my sexual abuse started when I was about 4 years old. And it was it was discovered by a parent, by my mother. She found out that it was happening, and I was pulled aside. And I very distinctly remember at 4 years old sitting at the end of my parents' bed with my feet dangling off the bed and being told that what I was doing was a bad thing.
Oh my.
And whether it was well-meaning, whether it was, my mother ill-equipped to have the conversation, it landed on me as if I was doing something shameful and it was my fault and it was something I was doing wrong versus something that was being done to me. And at 4 years old, I had no control over that.
Mhm.
And um, while I do vaguely remember some relief in being sort of caught and being like, oh, mommy will save me, right? And then immediately turning to that discussion, it was like, it really did shift a huge perspective in me. And I did a lot of growing up at 4 years old.
Hmm.
That abuse continued until I was 13. And it really, the only reason it stopped is the abusers, there were two of them that no longer had access to me.
So there was
I
no grown up that was protecting you. You were not safe in your home.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And the abusers were also informed that, that a parent knew, that someone knew, that my mom knew, but they just got better at hiding it. They didn't stop the abuse, they just got better at hiding it.
Mhm.
And the effects of the abuse started to become evident. I was a very emotional child. I cried a lot. Um, I was I'm an extrovert. I consider myself an ambivert now. I very much like my alone time, and I like I like sort of solitude and going into deep work and things like that. Um, but at the time as a child, it wasn't deep work that I was going into. It was retreating from
Mhm.
others because I didn't know who to trust. And so it affected my ability to focus. And by the time I got to high school, I was failing. I failed ninth grade English 3 times. I was taking ninth grade English in my junior year of high school still. Um, I had inability to focus. I was very flighty. It also affected my relationships. I was called boy crazy, where I was just seeking attention from boys, even though I was also very conservative in my own like willingness to explore relationships and things like that. So
So
it was
no teachers were alerted to that something must have been going on in your home, something
I
was.
actually, believe it or not, my English teacher, my ninth grade English teacher, because I spent an awful lot of time with her, because I took that class 3 times. No one knew that anything was going on in the home. I never felt comfortable talking about it. I
Mhm.
also, as an adult, later realized, right, this is kind of the process we go through, realized that I did not ask for help for anything, which, I look at now and I go, wow, like I'm an incredibly independent woman. Like I am, I can wield power tools. Like these bookcases behind me, I built them myself from scratch. Like, I'm the type of person who will go to the grocery store and carry all 17 bags of groceries in one trip because I can, damn it, even if even if somebody offers to help. And it's this sort of hyper independence because there was fear in asking for help because I had a belief that no one's going to help me anyway.
Well,
Why
you
bother?
do not believe it at 4 years old. You're
For
told
years.
it's your fault.
Right.
So you had to create this part of you, this piece of you, to keep yourself as safe as you could
Yeah.
because you
I
couldn't
learned I had to
rely.
rely on
How,
myself.
how could you
Yeah.
rely on adults when your own mother
Yeah.
said it was your fault?
Yeah.
I'm so.
So yeah, absolutely. And again, and this is not to excuse her, but she clearly did not have the resources to handle it and didn't handle it in an appropriate way. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, that could be forgiven, except it was discovered multiple times that it was still going on, even up until I was about 13. Even up until I was about 13 years old, as well. And like I said, the only reason it stopped is the abusers no longer had access to me. It
No one
wasn't because
stopped
of
it
any
for you.
intervention. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I did find out also later, many years later, that the abusers, when didn't have access to me anymore, they went on to my little sister.
Mhm.
So, and again, no intervention, and there was no offer of like therapy or anything. It was, we keep it hush and we don't talk about it
Mhm.
because it'll disrupt everyone else's life. Um,
So this is the messaging and modeling that you had.
yeah,
So the
yep,
trauma, the messaging and modeling, which again, why would you reach out for help when you're told, you're not going to get help and you are it's all supposed to be hush.
yep. I just gotta handle it. Just gotta get my shit together,
Mhm.
basically. So, yeah, in high school, finally, there was some awareness so my grandmother ended up with Alzheimer's and she moved in with us. So in high school, for my last 2 years of high school, I switched to being in school part-time and then being homeschooled for the other classes so that I could stay home and take care of my grandmother.
Mhm.
So I had the extra stress of that. So the abuse had stopped, but now I have this whole other role that I'm not prepared for at, 15, 16 years old to start taking care of my grandmother. And it was interesting because as my grandmother got Alzheimer's, she regressed in age. So it was really like taking care of an 8-year-old,
Yeah.
um, an 8-year-old adult. And she didn't I never got full stories because I don't think that she had full memories, but I got little bits and pieces of her abuse as well. I started to understand stories of that, which was I'm so sad that she had to go through that. And but I also look at it and I'm like, well, that's where I get so much of my resilience from. And also that's where we get this generation of we don't talk about it, we keep it hush, and you just suck it up and you know,
Well,
you just
intergenerational trauma. It
yeah,
definitely has been passed down from
absolutely.
grandmother to your mother to you.
hmm So in high school, when I switched into that part-time homeschooling, this English teacher at least had the wherewithal to say to me, to say to the guidance counselors and things like that, like they wanted to put me into special ed because I wasn't passing my classes and I couldn't focus. And they had me tested for ADHD, which they said no. The full psych eval, IQ test, all of these things came back and they're like, okay, she's really intelligent. She doesn't have ADHD. What does she have? Well, they finally discovered that I was dyslexic.
Mhm.
That's almost irrelevant to this, right? It is part of like the executive function, limited executive function, and developmental arrested development. It is an effect of that, but that was definitely not the emotional dysregulation and the lack of focus. It was a difficulty reading, definitely. Um, so that was the only hint of, hey, somebody's looking at this and saying what might be wrong. And they got to a diagnosis. They called it dyslexia, and they were like, oh, boom, there you go. That's the problem. Done.
Well, that's the problem with diagnosis. Then you don't look anywhere else. No, hyper
Exactly.
focus now on one thing, and this is the reason for everything instead of looking at the other piece, which
Exactly.
was very
Exactly. And
important.
I have a really tough time with diagnosis. A lot of the clients I work with as well, they come to me with a whole list of, I call them D's on your report card, all the the disorders that they give you on your report card. And now through my work and everything that I've done, we throw your diagnosis out. Your diagnosis is irrelevant, really. It's just a list of symptoms. That's all it is.
Right.
We
Well, so
look
many
at the
times,
cause.
right, because many times people, it's a reaction or a reflective of their trauma.
Yeah,
And yes, they may be anxious, but it's
sure.
because of the trauma.
Right.
You lose that if you only look at someone as an anxious person.
Right. So when you treat the label, right, whether it's and CPTSD is the majority of people I work with come in with some form of diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress, whether it's self-diagnosed or an official diagnosis, people recognize that, oh, my list of symptoms falls into this little box, right? And
Mhm.
that's the majority of people we work with. And complex post-traumatic stress, for anybody who doesn't know, is long-term exposure to trauma, right? Long-term exposure to not having the resources you needed.
Which is,
That's
by the way, such an important diagnosis. And the reason I say that to you is when I was, talking about the traitor within and talking about that it comes out of trauma,
yeah,
or even my own trauma in my childhood, I always made excuses. Well, it wasn't like I was, in an explosion. It wasn't like
right.
I was raped. It wasn't like I was, but it was a constant feeling of not feeling safe. It
Yeah,
was, and
yeah.
particularly as a child.
And
And
that's
so thank
exactly it.
goodness for this diagnosis.
And
No,
and I really do. I think that complex post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress, PTSD and CPTSD, they get lumped together as, I think people think of them as siblings, maybe, right? If you could consider them siblings.
yeah.
They're really maybe cousins. Complex post-traumatic stress is just so much bigger and different, partly because it's really hard to put your finger on the one event. Now, a lot of the work that I do, we don't talk about, people never have to tell me their story. They don't have to tell me what happened to them. I don't want to say that it's irrelevant. Obviously, it's very relevant to who they are as a person. But as far as getting them to a place where they can say, wow, I feel healed. Like, wow, I feel like myself again. The story of what happened doesn't matter so much as what is your brain and body doing as a result of what happened. So, because I know for a lot of people, talking about what they experienced is more dysregulating,
Traumatic.
re-triggers them, re-traumatizes. So,
Right.
that doesn't even have to become part of the conversation because it's so much more important to understand what is it your brain is doing or your subconscious mind is doing that is causing this list of symptoms that they now put a label on and call it a diagnosis, right? So we don't treat the diagnosis, we
I
treat
love,
we treat the
I love
cause.
what you do.
Yeah, it's so fun. And it's actually really, really fun. And I know that sounds bonkers to say that, like, oh, we make trauma healing fun. Like, trauma and fun are not supposed to belong in the same sentence, but it really is. It's fun because you feel like it feels good. And you're like, oh, wait, I want to keep doing this. This is actually an enjoyable experience.
And as the therapist, you can see change. You
Yes.
see their change.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's hugely rewarding,
Yeah.
hugely rewarding. I just had a call with a client this morning and she's like, hey, can we have a little chat? And I was like, yeah, of course. What's going on? She's like, nothing. Nothing's going on. And I'm like, okay, so unpack that. And it was, she recognized very, very early a pattern, sort of a social construct pattern that she's sort of been in. And she recognized right away, she's like, I'm not reactive. I'm not angry.
Huh.
And I'm not sad.
That's recovery.
That's right. She was stuck in the middle. And really, she went into a freeze state because she had to make a decision between something she, something that's very important to her, like helping people. But then she knew that she didn't really want to do that thing and it was going to disappoint someone. And she put into a freeze state. But it wasn't this explosive thing. It wasn't her normal, like, shut down or get angry or slam doors or run away and cry or anything like that. It was just stop. And it was because she absolutely knew she didn't want to do the thing and she was giving herself permission to not do the thing. And so it was really, really huge. And she's like, this was so fun. Like 20-minute conversation. She's like, I feel so much better. This is so much fun. And it's like, it's fun to regulate your nervous system. It's actually, it feels good. It's like playing a game, you know? So
I
it's
love
cool. It's really cool.
it.
Yeah.
So in your childhood, you're forming your traitor within. You're learning how to cope with your trauma.
Yeah.
So how did that show up in your teenage years and your adult years?
Okay, so everywhere, everywhere. I kind of call trauma's like a glitter bomb. You know, like you get glitter somewhere, it's like it just keeps showing up forever and ever and ever, like you can never get rid of it. That's what trauma was to me. It was literally showing up in every aspect of my life for years, decades. Um, so obviously I talked about in high school, like I couldn't focus, I couldn't get it together. I was also socially disconnected. Like I
Mhm.
wanted to hang out with my friends, but like I didn't understand like inside jokes. I was kind of like naive to things. Like people would make, teenagers make jokes about innuendo and stuff. And I was like, I don't get it. Like I really, and then I started being ostracized because I was like, I didn't get it. I was looked flaky. I looked disconnected. So it affected social life. I preferred to have just a couple of close friends and I wanted to spend all of my time with them because I was an extrovert. I wanted to hang out with people, but I didn't trust a lot of people.
Mhm.
So I would get really clinging to a couple people. Um, Jobs, I was very ambitious. At 15 years old, I walked a mile and a half to a TJ Maxx to like go get a job. Like I was just gonna do it. And I did, and I got the job. And like 3 months later, I got fired because I just couldn't function. Like I was late all the time. I didn't care. Like I didn't like show that I cared. I could learn very quickly, but I didn't execute on that. I would like do the job kind of half-assed, and then I would be like, I don't care. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I kind of had an authority issue, like an authority complex. Like a manager would try and talk to me, and I'm like, "Who the hell do you think you are? You work in whatever. I don't know. Like, I imagined like, oh, you're this age by now. You're supposed to. Why do you work in retail management? Like, you know what I mean? I had these sort of very judgmental, like, and it really was a reflection on myself, like thinking, oh, when I'm that age, this is where I'll be in life. But it was very anti-authority. Wasn't super rebellious. I wasn't out like, lighting things on fire. I wasn't smoking or drinking, but it was just this very big disconnect between who I was and anyone telling me what I was supposed to be doing. It affected my relationships. I ended up in an emotionally abusive and controlling relationship. I met him when I was 15. We stayed together until I was 26.
Wow.
And it was, even um, like turning 21, it was like, I should have had like a party. I should have had friends over. I should have done something for me. And he decided that he was going to have a couple of his friends over for a barbecue, and then they were just going to play video games all day. And I was just,
Had
okay,
nothing
this
to
is
do with
just what you
you.
do, you know?
So how did you show up in that relationship? What was that?
Very much the giver, the doer, the take care of him and make sure his needs were met, and very not myself, just whatever he needed me to be.
Hmm.
Just whatever he needed me to be. And absolutely that came from being groomed in,
Hmm.
a childhood, in a being sexually abused and being groomed and then being threatened by my abusers that if I told or if something happened, I would be hurt. So there were other people that could see it. There were people that we worked at the same job because he wanted to make sure he could keep eyes on me all times. And there were other people there that were like, "Why are you with him?" And these were his friends. So
Hmm.
they recognized that. but I was young and did not have any other relationship experience to model after, you know? Um, so it affected my relationships. It affected my ability to keep a job. It affected my ability to pay bills. I ruined my credit pretty early on because I just wouldn't pay my bills. I either wouldn't have the money because I would have gotten fired or I was calling out sick or, I was just like living financially in constant either survival mode or scarcity mode. And so then it was like, oh, well, nothing happened if I didn't pay my bills. Like, oh, I didn't die. So then it became this whole like, well, I don't need to do that. Why would I do that? Right. So that got ruined pretty quickly. My relationships, obviously, I lost friends because they were like looking at me and my relationship and saying, this is like controlling and abusive, and they would be like, I can't hang out with you. I can't be your friend. I can't save you from yourself, right? And I would just call them with the problems we were having, and I would call them crying, and they're like, we can't do this anymore, you know? And I didn't understand why. I was the victim in that. I was like, what? My boyfriend's mean to me, and now my friends are mean to me? Like, what is going on, right? Didn't have an awareness that it could be me. Didn't have that awareness. It really felt like I had been victimized, and everywhere I looked, I was
Again,
being victimized.
again and again.
And again and again. I call it Freddy Krueger's Groundhog Day because I was just living one crisis to the next, but it was like, a horror movie. Like, you know. So it affected my financial ability to like my work, my career, it affected my relationships. It also affected my health. I when my grandmother came to live with us when I was in high school, I started breaking out in hives every morning so bad that like my whole face would swell up. It looked like someone punched me in the mouth. It would take I would take Benadryl and then I'd sleep all day and like I couldn't get ahead of it. And this was like 6, 8 weeks. I started every single day with just horrible hives all over my whole body, so uncomfortable. Um, now I know, now years later, right? And I went to an allergist, I went to a doctor, they gave me antibiotics, they gave me steroids, they gave me all these things and
Again, no
nothing.
one's asking you about what's going on in your life. No one's
No.
asking you what.
Nope. They were like, oh, it's probably your laundry detergent. Did you change laundry detergents? Did you start using a new deodorant? Like they're asking me about like contact dermatitis, like environmental
And I
causes.
understand having to do that too, but you need to do both.
But when everything comes up,
Right.
no, when
You need to
every
look at
allergy test comes up zero,
oh,
when
zero.
changing the laundry detergent, going, like to like everything, anti-allergy, everything, like no one says what's going on. What's the stress? Do you have new stress in your environment? No one, not a single doctor asked that question. We even said my grandmother, who has Alzheimer's, just moved in with us. Like we said it and it was like, oh, well, maybe, is it something from her? Is it like, again, thinking it's her soap or her perfume or no one unpacked that. And I didn't have really even access to resources to even begin
No.
to think, oh, that might be my nervous system
Right.
freaking out because my cortisol levels were through the roof. I wasn't getting the support I needed. I was in constant fight or flight mode. So this went on until I left home and I moved to California. I went off to from Boston to California for college, and my boyfriend came with me. So there was still that controlling aspect, but the hives went away, and it was like, okay, cool, maybe it was environmental. And again, nobody said it was stress. There was like, oh, it just be something in the home. Um, so that changed quite a bit, but then the relationship got more difficult because I was actually doing something for myself. I was in college and I was studying and I was loving it. I was loving being exposed to the world and starting to realize who I was and what I was capable of without people telling me I couldn't or that I was, disordered with dyslexia or, called flaky. I mean, my parents nicknamed me Snowflake. And you learn to live up to the labels that they give you. You learn to play into that. Oh, they like calling you snowflake. Oh, cool. Then you act flaky and ditzy and forgetful. And you play into it because you need that validation because without that, you're ostracized. And guess what? When you're rejected from the group, it's death.
Mhm.
When especially when we're children, and I had the developmental, like my executive functions had developed like a young child at that point. I'm in my, early 20s, but I'm still a young child in a lot of my development. And so yeah, to be rejected from the group, if I don't have my needs met by other adults, by people, in my brain, my body sees that as death, and that turns fight or flight back on.
Right.
So it was a constant cycle. And like I said, Freddy Krueger's Groundhog Day all the time, constant crisis. Um, so yeah, and it affected my ability to like reach my goals. And I almost failed out of college twice.
Mhm.
And I kept constantly, I didn't change my major, but I was an architect major. But my thesis, I changed my ideas so many times. I didn't give myself an opportunity, it really for quite some time to like actually produce good quality work because I just kept losing interest in one subject. So I would move to another one and another one and another one and another one. Um, it's a 5-year degree program, and it took me 8 years to get out of there because again, I wasn't, you know, like I didn't have all the resources I needed. I wasn't
Yeah.
developmentally, a 22, 24-year-old person. I was really, it was like going to college at 13 years old, you know? So, yeah, it affected every aspect of my life. Absolutely. My health, my career, my relationships, and just my ability to like grow and learn and achieve goals and even just be happy.
Mhm. Yeah. So you were seeing a therapist at all at any of this point? Was
Yeah, so actually I started to see a therapist because the boyfriend that I was with for 11 years, like I said, we were together from when I was 15 till I was 26. Um, I moved away. I went to Denmark for a while. I lived overseas. I left him behind, but we were together. And when I came back, I was a different person. I finally, again, started to feel like who I was for myself. And he didn't have control of that. And so there was a lot of tensions in our relationship. And so I don't remember if it was him or I that suggested we go to couples therapy. So we find this couples therapist, and it turns out he has bonded with her and, has these private conversations with her and has convinced her that I'm basically like a Flibberty Gibbet. And that the only reason he's in therapy is so that the therapist can tell me that he wants to break up with me.
wow.
And so
And she believed it.
oh my God, totally wrapped up in it. Like totally like, oh, okay, like that's a great thing. Well, I'm oblivious to this. I don't know that this is what's happening. So, that's basically what happened. We went in for a session one day and she's like, "Well, I need to tell you something." And he's sitting right there next to me on the couch and I'm like, "Wow, this feels like an ambush." And then I ended up seeing her for a little while longer, but not like I couldn't trust her. I couldn't have conversations with her about it. It really felt like she was just um padding her client roster. I don't know. It really didn't feel there was not anything genuine there. I then found another therapist who really was, again, it didn't feel genuine. I didn't really feel like there was any unpacking of anything. She even told me, "Oh, you're so tired. Why don't you just come in? You can just take a nap on my couch." I'm like, "I don't pay you $160 an hour to take a nap. I can do that for free at home." And
Did you leave
no
her then,
one,
or were you just
what's that?
was that an aha moment to not be with this?
A little bit. It was a little bit in terms of standing up for myself and saying like, "Hey, can we actually like work on some stuff?" And there was a little bit of she did get to the point where I did announce that I had some childhood trauma or that I had been abused. But there wasn't a whole lot of like, it's just, well, how do you feel about that? It was very like superficial. It was very much about my feelings. She never even asked me to like tell the story of what happened. She never asked to. I don't really remember walking away from those therapy sessions feeling better or even feeling like I had a grip on it. It
Sounds like you
felt
didn't even feel safe. And being in therapy, you need to feel safe.
yeah, that
Right.
was kind of it. It's like I didn't feel safe to open up. It was very superficial of like, oh, here's the little drama that's happening right now in my life versus, hey, here's this big stuff that's affecting my whole life. How do I address that?
Right.
So I did see her for a little while, um, because it felt like I had like, it was like, here's what I equated that to. It felt like I had a friend and it was like gossip hour.
Mm.
I would just go and like vent and unload, but then it was like, oh, time's up. Okay, see you, bye. We'll see you next week. And you can just unload next week. And it was like, at some point, I was feeling like, well, when do we work on this? When do I get to make this stop? And I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know that I trusted that this person is educated and licensed and they're supposed to know how to guide the conversation. They're supposed to know how to get me to um some sort of a destination. And it wasn't happening. There was no discussion about it and I didn't know, you know, I was also at a place, I will say this, that in hindsight, obviously, right? It's all in hindsight. I realized that I literally was waiting for someone to give me permission for everything I had, everything to do in life.
Interesting.
Even things I wanted, even things I knew I wanted. And I considered myself this badass. I was riding motorcycles at 16 years old. I saved up my money and bought my big lifted Jeep Wrangler so I could just drive around with the top off and just feel free. Like I had all of these things that I did myself. But when it came to like going to college, I
Hmm.
didn't have anybody telling me like, hey, let's get you like, hey, where do you want to go to school or whatever. I just sat back and I was waiting for someone to be like, do you want to go to college?
Hmm.
Well, I did actually. I did. And I waited till someone made it like a, hey, you either need to go get a job or you need to go to college. Get off your ass and go do something. And the same thing with jobs, the same thing with relationships. It was like if I wanted something, I had to sit in silence and suffer until someone offered it to me. And therapy, I felt like was the same way. I'm like, well, I'm
Well,
just supposed
that's
to
not
sit back and wait.
uncommon. I think when people go to therapists and not good therapists, they stay because they believe that this is a person who knows what they're doing. So that's
Right.
common. And I always tell people, first of all, you need to shop around to find the right one anyway. Even if you go to 10 good therapists, not there's different therapy, you know.
For right, different types of therapy, there's different modalities, and there is also not every therapist is created equally, right? So you do have to
There are
find.
bad therapists. And I as a therapist, I know that when I have a person in my office, or talk to anybody, that I have a huge responsibility because I could hurt them if I don't do what, the
The
proper.
right. Yeah.
If this episode is hitting home for you, if you are realizing that trauma might be affecting your whole life, that your coping mechanisms just aren't cutting it anymore, or that you need support on your healing journey, I have something that I need to share with you. It's called Break Free from CPTSD, a 6-week neuroscience-based trauma healing program created by Arci Grey, a neurocognitive specialist, and the CEO of Survivor School. RC has helped so many survivors move from just getting through the day to actually taking back control of their lives. Now, this isn't therapy, it's a step-by-step roadmap based on how much trauma impacts the brain and body. It's the kind of resource so many of us wish that we had earlier. Real tools, guided support, and a clear path toward healing. If you're ready to finally break free from trauma symptoms and move forward, definitely check it out. You'll find the link in Jessica's show notes.